The idea that Christ said, the thief cometh not but for to kill and to steal and to destroy, in John 10:10, I am come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. And then we see in Romans chapter, I don't know about you, but I this journey of a real intimate, personal, passionate relationship with Christ has opened my mind gates to understand that there are more connections than the shallow connections that we often find in church. And I'm not digging on churches. Sometimes, like me, I think pastors are perpetuating something they've been taught by people who are perpetuating something they've been taught. I don't believe probably 90% of pastors have any malicious intent. They just, like me for 8 years, didn't know the answers. And we're giving what we've been fed in Bible college and in conferences. And I just want you to open your mind to understand that there are more connections than that. And the whole point here is Jesus said in John, I've come to give them life and life abundant. Paul said in Romans that our hope may abound. And we talk about our cup running over, right? And I've heard people say this, it ought to be in your life that you have so much joy of the Lord that you're having to, people are lapping up out of your saucer, right? I mean, you're just having to give it out so you don't make a mess, right? You ever had, Shelby worked at a coffee shop. I don't know if this ever happened. We had this happen at Taco Bell one time, if I'm remembering right, where one of the, and y'all didn't have vending machine, soda machines, I understand, but Chick-fil-A, did you ever have one of those arms stay lock open? And it's just, and then it would happen this way, that the drain for the machine's clogged at the same time, and you don't notice until, and so it's overflowing. So what are you doing? You're putting pitchers under there, and you're taking the pitcher somewhere else, and you're taking the pitcher somewhere else. And it ought to be in our life that we have so much hope that people who walk by are getting pitchers of hope. And I wonder if at our job people are getting pictures of hope. This is all free. We're not in the lesson yet. Wait, it's all free. But are people getting pictures of hope from you? That'd be a good sermon subject, I think, to help us to realize how God, what's that? It could be a series. I could see pictures of hope, and each picture has a label on it for the different things that we have hope in. Because you should be overflowing in faith. You should be overflowing in... Thank you, Brother Magna. I'm expecting an outline soon from you. And you got what? Oh, yeah. That's my favorite. TSK is my favorite. I love that. And I love the online version because you put your verse in and it's got them listed, quoted beside it. I love that. Instead of the traditional TSK, you're having to flip to each verse. It's the lazy pastor's way, right? It's the pastor that works 60 hours and takes care of the church's way. So anyway, the whole point is, though, that I like that, Brother Magnan. You put a kernel, so if it comes out, you just know you helped me with that. I appreciate it. And so anyway, the whole point, I was actually going to be preaching on joy in the next couple of weeks, so that might be a good thing to go through. Yeah. So the whole point here is, our hope ought to be abounding. We ought to be abounding in hope so that others are seeing the hope instead of the negative. We have a choice. I have my tagline on my email. You know how you have a signature? My email signature at the bottom has, there's always bad, there's always good. The difference is what you're looking for. And it's not quite that, but it's very close to that. And so in our home situations, in our church situations, in our life situations that don't fit any of those, in our work situation, are we abounding in hope so that folks are getting, I'm just going to keep the illustration, pictures from us, or are we tying in? And I'll be the first to admit that too often I tie in. And when I look back on the tie-in, I'll tell you what it is. I don't have enough abounding in hope. I'm not practicing the hope in the small things and all the little things. And so I'd encourage you. I was thinking about that Sunday when he was going in that verse and talking about abounding. I was thinking about that illustration of having an overflowing abundance of hope. One of those sickly, hopeful people that drive you nuts. You know what I'm talking about? You're like, are they ever burdened? Well, yeah, they just know what to do with their burdens. And so that doesn't mean be perfect. Please don't be perfect. Admit your difficulties and then talk about how God has hope. Yeah, joy. Yep. That's the fruits of the Spirit. Fruits of the Spirit. So we'll get to that. I think that is a good idea, Brother Mann. I appreciate that. So I'll put tagline on the YouTubes, inspired by, and if you go out and it's still on YouTube, we'll put in loving memory of, and at the end of each verse, at the end of each sermon, we'll tag that. So anyway, let's go on. 9, verse 8. For the Son of Man, Matthew 12:8. For the Son of Man is Lord, even of the Sabbath day. God's Lord. I expounded upon this ad nauseum last week. We are so tied up in the rules that we forget that God is Lord. Now, rules are for a reason. Anarchy is not what you want. I remember when I was a teenager, I wanted anarchy. Had the anarchist cookbook. Thankfully, never blew myself up because that was the intent when the FBI put that out. But okay, I was a very dark individual before Christ came into my life, and I thought anarchy was a great idea. I understand now that God puts governments in place for a reason, rules in place for a reason. So we have to understand the rules are good, the rules are important, but we can't let. So I gave you all that last week. Verse number 9, and when he departed thence, he went into their synagogue. And behold, there was a man which had his hand withered, and they asked him, saying, Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath day, that they might accuse him? That they might accuse him. That was the end of the quote. So they wanted to accuse him. They wanted to catch him up. Oh, Lord of the Sabbath, can you heal on the Sabbath day? I get a lot of questions as a pastor. Generally, they're uninformed or underinformed or overinformed in the wrong way. I'm shocked sometimes. Over the 12 years that I've pastored, I've had folks come that are Bible college graduates and all kinds of, taught Sunday school for long times and all kinds of things that you'd think if anybody knows the Bible, it's them. They're going to know the Bible. And I have been sadly disabused of that notion. And I'm not talking about the new stuff we're learning, not new, but we're retraining our mind to what God has for us. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like this. How many verses are in the Old Testament that allow certain things on the Sabbath day that would fall under this category? We're going to learn about it, but I think people aren't. We're not taught to think. We're taught to absorb and not make the connections. And pastors get mad when church members ask them questions. If I get mad because you ask me a question, that is me. That is a problem I have. And it might just be a bad day, or it might just be you've asked me a lot of dumb questions and I'm tired of it. If I'm being an honest person, I think I just said the quiet part out loud, but, but the truth of the matter is, it could just be that you're a scorner and you're asking lots of questions to try to... what's this say here? To accuse him. And pastors get that. What Nikki just said, there's a difference between questioning and asking questions. It is not respectful, helpful, or edifying to question. That's Just go ahead and come out and tell me you don't trust me, you don't respect me, and you don't agree with me, and that's when you well, Pastor, do we really think this? That's questioning, right? Bad attitude behind it. Coming for clarity is asking a question. So we did this. Somebody came up to me with a question about what Brother Coomer had said about when the last Gentile is saved, then the rapture occurs, and the fact that they didn't know where the verse was for that. And hey, look, that's asking a question. The verse is in Romans 11:25. When the fullness of the Gentiles is come, and we have probably 90% of prophecy end times experts will interpret that verse as the last Gentile saved. But why do you do that? Because I told you to believe that. Well, no. But we know that in the end times, after Revelation chapter 4, it's the Jewish nation again, who have found their Messiah and are witnessing for their Messiah. And Romans 11:25 says the Jewish nation will be back in charge after the fullness of the Gentiles has come. Well, what happens in Revelation chapter 4? Most biblical scholars believe that's the rapture. Pre-trib biblical scholars believe that's the rapture. So the rapture happens, all the Gentiles who are saved and Jews who are saved at that point will be pulled out of the world. Why? Because the fullness of Gentiles has come. And the church will no longer be the front man. Sorry, I'm not doing well. The front man of Christ. And the Jews will be the front man of Christ right there. So you put those things together and you say, that's probably what that means. Is it 100% sure? I ain't going to hang my doctrinal shingle out for that. Right? But it makes sense. If you don't agree, I don't care. We're not going to fight about it. But I am shocked when folks don't know that that's there. And I'm not mad at that either. Because my focus isn't the end times. So you're going to get over a lot on me if you start talking end times. Because I'm like, okay. I just happen to know some things, right? But the whole point is, there's a difference between questioning for clarity and questioning. And Jesus here is not being asked to question for clarity. He's being questioned. And that's a problem. It's a problem. I've had my fair share of being questioned as a pastor. And I'd like everybody to take into account all the things I've sacrificed to be the pastor of this church. Before you start thinking, you got to take me to task. Y'all don't. Y'all haven't done that. But that doesn't mean I'm untouchable. I'm not of the men who say, don't touch the pastor. I am of the men who say, be careful and do it correctly. But I'm not above reproach. I'm not above being said, hey, did you say that? I don't agree with that. I'm not above that. So as we go on, he says this. They said, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath days? And he said unto them, what man shall there be among you that shall have one? Now this is amazing. We're here today. We're here today where people value animals above humans. And I'll read it so you understand my statement. What man shall there be among you that shall have one sheep, and if it fall into a pit on the Sabbath day, will not lay hold on it and lift it out? How much then is a man better than a sheep? Yeah, right there in the Bible, that men are above animals. I know that sometimes can get on in people's craw a little bit. I know sometimes even church people can get a little upset about the fact that we value humans above animals. Look, if I have to choose whether my animal eats or my kids eat, the animal's going to go. Well, some countries do. And if we have enough, if a post-apocalyptic occurrence occurs, or if you happen to be on the mission field, and you get a good side of beef, you thought, and then you realize these are real stories of missionaries sitting there and they're eating, and all of a sudden they know Rover's not running around anymore. Yeah, that's Shelby. Shelby told me that story. Yeah, from a friend that was on the mission field who experienced that. Well, look, you know what? Their poverty, like you think I'm poor. The poorest people in America got more than people in some countries. The guys in Dallas and Fort Worth, living under the bridge with their cup out, have more material possessions than some people in other countries. I see them out there with cup in one hand, cell phone in another. I'm like, no, I ain't paying your cell phone bill. Because you could do something with that cell phone called get a job. I have a solution for the homeless population, but nobody asked me about it. But I'm not even a snarky solution. I have a real solution that I think would work. But nobody's asked me about it that matters. So he went in. It's a multifaceted solution with tiered systems, but I'm not part of the city's infrastructure. So, but here's the thing. They said, can you heal on a Sabbath day? And he said, you get your sheep out of there. This guy's got a withered hand. What is wrong with you? By the way, I think by implication, the Mosaic Law gives us the ability to help somebody physically on the Sabbath day. Because we know a man whose oxen falls in a ditch, who he's quoting right here, can get it out on the Sabbath day regardless of the steps. And the steps were added by the Jewish rabbis anyway to help stay, But here's the point. If you can get an animal out that has not the Spirit of God, has not the image of God, then you can get the image bearers out too. So it's a thought, right? That we got to understand that we can't put ourselves in a position of not understanding God's law, understanding God's word. We ought to be skillful in God's word. These are the leaders of the synagogue. They knew it. They were hoping he didn't. And we as Christians cannot allow ourselves to be ignorant of God's word. It is your responsibility, not mine, to make sure that you are skillful in God's word. I have 4 hours in a week to give you as much as I can to make you skillful in God's word. Anybody, Chris, we got 2 educators in here. Probably some that know this too. How many hours does it take to become an expert in a thing? Say golf swing. How many golf swing? How many hours swinging a golf club before you're an expert golfer? How many hours building game development? How many hours before you're an expert? You remember in college you got this statistic. It's a book that was written. You remember what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. It's probably about 152 on average.
10,000 hours. It's 10,000. Now, not to be good, but to be an expert. It's 10,000 hours. Shelby, do you remember that in your education thing? I'll look it up to verify that it's that many hours. But I believe it's 10,000 hours to become an expert. So, Christian, how long is it going to take? 4 hours a week to become an expert at God's Word. What is our imperative? To be skillful in God's Word. Now, I'm not saying you're no good because you get 4 hours. I'm saying, how many hours? 10,000. Now, what was the name of the guy that had that? Malcolm Gladwell. Yeah, Gladwell Principles of Education or something. I can't remember. But so 10,000 hours to become an expert. That's putting the burden on the Christian. We have to put more time per week. So 4 plus 7 in your devotions is 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then you can include like reviewing your cards for memory verses or your devotion throughout the day. And I would say that it's not 10,000 straight hours, but if you do something in that hour, you can count that hour towards your proficiency, right? It's not like you start the clock and 10,000 hours have to pass by. It's not even really 10,000 hours. He's just putting a hyperbole out there to tell you it's difficult to become an expert. So if you young people think you're good at something, you haven't lived long enough to have 10,000 hours of expertise in anything. So humble yourselves. Christians, this is a huge imperative. Now, I'm not saying when you get 10,000 hours you can stop, or that you're no good till you get 10,000 hours. Somebody with 1,000 hours is going to be good, just not elite. Right? Somebody with 500 hours is going to be good, but not elite. So how many hours do you get? Can you answer these questions like Jesus could? Now, no, not like Jesus could, but can you answer them? Wherefore, verse number 12, how much then is a man better than sheep? Wherefore is it lawful to do well on the Sabbath days? I love how in Isaiah, God calls his people to say, he says, come, let us reason together. He gave us minds to reason, to think, to build connections instead of simply being fed. Everyone in here was raised in a system of education, whether homeschooled or public school, unless you're the one off. You're raised in a system of education that is taught how to absorb, not how to learn. Therefore, if I'm not feeding you, it falls into your church experience, your spiritual experience. If I'm not feeding you, you can't learn. So why do so many Christians come and say, Pastor, you're not feeding me? Well, first of all, you were sleeping in church. First of all, you came to one service out of 4. First of all, you didn't, you know what I mean? I didn't see a Bible in any of those times. That's first. Second, we've got to learn to learn. And here, Pastor, are you going to teach a series on that? No. No, I'm not. It is your responsibility to do this. Think about Brother Coomer's testimony. He gets saved. He gets in an independent Baptist church with a doer mentality. I don't know if he told this story up here or if he told it back in the foyer somewhere, where the church he was going to had a different activity every week. It was hot dog Sunday, cowboy Sunday, this Sunday, that Sunday, this Sunday. And all the workers he got burned up in a year. And said, there's got to be more to church than this. And he went out on his own and developed this idea of a real relationship with God. He learned. He used other resources. He pulled them together. And he said, this is what it is. And some of you have started benefiting from that. I've started benefiting from that. And I look back and go, I could have done that. But instead of learning, I was absorbing. I'm trying to think, there's a better word for it. I was having injected into me. I was being conformed. Instead of learning, I was conforming. And I could have made these connections on my own. Because connections I'm making for you now aren't connections Brother Coomer gave me at times. I'm building some of my own lessons for counseling, making new connections as I get better at it and talk through it with people, right? And so it's your responsibility to get to this point where, and I'll help you. Ask me questions, and you got questions, we got answers. But it is on you. I will give you kickstarts. I'll give you treats on Sunday and Wednesday. I'll give you little, I want to know more. We're going to talk, it's this Sunday. We're going to talk about rejection in our Sunday morning service. I'm going to give you 40 minutes of rejection material that I brought together from different sources. That is to whet your appetite on how to work through your rejection in your life. It's not the end-all be-all answer. It's for you to go, okay, wow, I have rejection. How am I going to keep moving forward? How am I going to fix this? So he says, then he said to the man, so he had him reason. If you can pull a sheep out, man's better than sheep, created in God's image, then it's lawful to heal. And he's continuing this exposition or whatever, this monologue on don't major on the law, major on grace. We talked about that. I guess that was last week. I don't remember now. But majoring on grace, not on majoring on the law. When you're doing, you're following the law. Okay? So we want to follow grace. Then he said to man, stretch forth thy hand. And he stretched it forth, and it was restored whole like as the other. And that's great. That it was made like as to the other. Let me figure out how far down we're going tonight. Then the Pharisees went out and held counsel against him. They plotted. Cowards. You know? You ever get an anonymous note under your door? Those of you that worked in office situations or something, get an anonymous note under your door. You know what I do with anonymous notes? File 13. Go there for future reference. Right? I'll get to it when I get to it. I'm not opening an anonymous note. In fact, never mind. If you give me a note because you're mad at me, I'm not opening that note either. Because you're going to talk to me. But these men went out. It's gossip. Falls under the realm of gossip. So when you're gossiping, I hesitate to say you, hopefully you are not gossiping. When we gossip, use a generalized term, when we gossip, we fall into the same place as these Pharisees, where we are plotting against the individual. You know why America has the face your accusers clause? It's biblical. You shouldn't have somebody in a room, dark room somewhere, doing all the judging and the judgmenting, and then coming out with their decree to you. And you didn't get to face the people who were against you. Who was Jesus' accusers? Hired actors were Jesus' accusers. The only accusers Jesus had were hired actors and hypocritical Pharisees and Sadducees and scribes. How they might destroy him. But when Jesus knew it, he went in and turned the tables over, slapped him across the face a little bit. Oh, I'm hallucinating. Sorry. That's what I would have done. I'd have heard about it. We coming to Jesus meetings, what we're doing. You know what? And I'll tell you this right now. I have not always done well with this. You don't always have to go in and rip down the walls. What did Brother Coomer say about personal interactions with this? And this is a great tool. Lord, is this my problem or their problem? Okay. I'm still going to get the flow chart out. Is this my problem or their problem? Okay. And now it's their problem. Do I say anything? Okay. If I say something, what do I say? How do I say it? When do I say it? Who, what, when, where, why? That's one of the greater tools you can do is remember that in English class in junior high, you were taught who, what, when, where, why, and you can handle many of your situations that way. For interpersonal interactions, your kids come to you with a question, well, who, what, when, where, why them to death? How? Sometimes how. I always forget that one. Sometimes the how comes later. But bring them to a conclusion, right? With who, what, when, where, why them to death. And how. Great. So he left. He said, they're not worth my time. I'm just expositing as we go through, if that's okay. I don't have like a central theme. But I'll say this. I often find myself in this situation. You're trying to win somebody over to the Lord or return them to God's graces, right, to bring them back in, and you've tried and you've tried and you've tried, and they're not listening, and it ends up being a toxic situation. We can learn from Jesus here. Go where you're hurt. Go where you're hurt. Now, that doesn't mean husbands, leave your wife. Okay, because I know, because you wouldn't be long. Husbands in here, all of us, I think, all of us husbands in here, we wouldn't be long. Yeah, my wife's like, it ain't worth the time. she would be, it ain't worth the time nor the jail. But you get married in high school, you learn a lot of things. Suddenly, you're the most available person ever when you're married in high school. Well, girls wouldn't give you the time of day till you got married. Now they all want you. And so my wife's like, I ain't fighting girls over you. I'm like, babe, I don't want nothing to do with them. And she's like, well, I don't care because I ain't fighting them anyway. If you'll go, you don't need to be. So that's her philosophy, right? And it should be your philosophy. I learned a lot. Hard. Very hard way. So here's the truth, right? Go where you're heard. Go where you're heard. You can't, if people are plotting against you, people are causing trouble, it's probably not that bad. But go where you're heard. Man, I'm trying to get my coworkers, every blah, 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 blah. Well, it's not working. So go to Walmart. That's the only place. I'm not going to Kroger. Shelby goes to Kroger for me. She swipes my card. I am not swiping my card paying that much for groceries. So she swipes it. Some things are just better at Kroger, okay? I hate to admit that. So mostly produce is just a little bit better. A salad anyway. Some of the fruits. So, but the whole point here is go somewhere that they will listen. I want to start a Bible study at work, but I can't. Well, go start a Bible study at a coffee shop. Or in a park. Or in a nursing home. Right? Do that. And so, but that's what Jesus don't. And what did he do? He healed them. He healed them all. You got to learn to follow the Lord. If he says this isn't the place, go to this place. But learn to follow the Lord. And charged them that they should not make him known. Why? He wanted to keep working without interference. It's about the best way I can interpret it. 10 commentaries will interpret that verse 10 ways. Really will. Because we don't know why he told them that. Some people he said, go tell your family. Some people he said, don't tell anybody. Some people he said, tell the priest. Some people he said, don't tell the priest. I think it's situational. He'd just come from a place that was trying to kill him out of time, early. And so he pulled back a little bit. He kind of filtered it out a little bit. That it might be fulfilled, which was spoken of by Isaiah the prophet, saying, behold my servant whom I have chosen, my beloved, in whom, we've got to be done here in just a second, whom my soul is well pleased, I will put my spirit upon him, and he shall show judgment to the Gentiles. So he went out there, he healed multitudes, and the Jews didn't get to have a part of it. The leaders of the Jews didn't get to have a part of it. We'll get to 21 and stop. He shall not strive, nor cry. So he didn't go in there and strive. He didn't go in there and cry. Why did he turn the tables upside down in the? Because these are the questions people ask. Then why did he turn the tables upside down in the synagogue or in the temple? Different place. Temple was the image of heaven. Different place. Neither shall any man hear his voice in the streets. A bruised reed shall he not break, and smoking flax shall he not quench, till he send forth judgment unto victory, and in his name shall the Gentile trust. So basically, he took the Jews who had the oracles of God, who should have been the receivers of everything, and he said, fine, I won't fight, I won't strive, I won't raise my voice, I'm going out in the countryside, no streets out there. It's practical response to prophecy. And Gentiles trusted in him. He didn't snap. You know what snapping off the bruised reed is? You know when you deadhead a rose? Everybody know what deadheading rose? Okay. Knockout roses have to be deadheaded. That means the dead roses you pop off so that more can grow. Because the dead rose is simply taking up nutrients and not growing. So you deadhead it. You're going to pull all the heads off. Same thing with bruised reed or Herman. What is that? Peace lily. You cut off the dead branches so that the nutrients don't go into there and take away from the plant. And it's the same thing here. He says, I'm not going to mess with the bruised reed. They can sit over there and rot. That's 20th century Sims loquialism. They can sit over there and rot for all I care. And he goes out to those who can hear.